Who am I? David Cole. I've been doing this for about over 15 years as an organization development change consultant. Uh, it comes out of some graduate work that I did at Pepperdine in the Masters of Science in Organizational Development, and then also on top of my MBA from the Kellogg School at Northwestern. I've worked with a wide array of clients, and I just put three on here because they represent three different geographical areas. Philips in Europe, Zales on the mainland, and then, as you heard me reference there, Central Pacific Bank there in Honolulu. Interesting story there. I launched my consulting practice in last summer, right at the beginning of the pandemic, and was lucky enough to get the Central Pacific Bank gig project. And of course, because of the pandemic, I didn't get to go. So, everybody on the mainland's wanting a Hawaiian client, and then I'd get one, and it's like, oh, well, too bad. You got to do it from Dallas. So speaking of Dallas, I live there. I'm married. I have 3 children, 2 dogs, 3 cats, and a bird. My in-laws say that we have a zoo, which I think is darn approximate. So people ask me, why do I keep coming back to this work? And the reality is that I'm addicted to it. When you're doing these kind of projects that we're talking about today, and you see people light up with passion and excitement about the potential of moving in a new direction, helping to create a new organization. Once you've achieved that, once you've had that experience, you have to keep coming back for more because it's so powerful. So that's why I go about and do this work. So let's talk a little bit about change. And as I said earlier, there's a lot said, written, made of change. And my perspective on it really comes out of this quote. Randy Root is the founder of a learning and development consultancy called Root Learning, now owned by Accenture. And he said one time, companies say to us, we tell our people what the new strategy is, but they don't get it. We must have a communication problem. No, they don't have a communication problem. They have a misunderstanding of human nature. This idea that, we've been doing this forever in business, is that oftentimes the CEO and the leadership team in an organization says, okay, we have to change. Here's how we're going to change this new strategy. And then they get before a podium and they say, guess what? This is what we're going to do. And then they stand back and ask for compliance. Well, as you know, and everybody knows, that's really not going to work, because people, if they are going to change, they have all kinds of issues and concerns and fears and needs that need to be addressed before they can move to that next step. They need to have the story. They need to tell the story in their own way so that they can make that transformation. So that sets the tone for a little bit about how we're going to be approaching this. And so the way that I think about it, human side of change, is really an approach to change that understands, respects, and honors the wants, needs, and complexities in human nature. The outcome is authentic change to what people do and how they behave, or, and you'll hear me say this several times during the presentation, doing and being. So it's about honoring people, the realities and the complexities of humans, because organizations are nothing but a collection of human beings, and they have wants, needs, and a need for understanding if they are going to make this transformation, this change. One way I think about it is to think about change management is really the human side of change is just one side of a two-sided approach, often called change management or OCM. And we've all heard that term. And the way that I think of it is really, it's about the head and the heart. right? The human side of it is the heart. It's getting to people's emotions. It's getting them excited, engaged, wanting to make this move. The change management piece of it is a bit more of the traditional, a lot of project management. It's about, making sure the technical gap analysis and the detailed project plan, and making sure the communications are tailored for the particular whatever it is. But what I have seen in the work that I've done and the work of others is that's great and it needs to happen. But if you don't address the human side of it, the heart, then you're not going to be successful. You're going to fall flat in terms of your effort. So what I'm talking about today is that top part of it, the heart, the human side of it. How do we get people to make that movement towards where you want them to go? So here's our agenda. We're going to talk about the human side of change, its guiding principles, as I see it, the overview of the approach. We're going to be at 30,000 foot level at that, so I can give you just a quick perspective. How it looked at CPB. We're not going to get into the entire experience at CPB, but I'm going to talk about a couple of key events that we held to make sure that we address some of the elements of the human side of change. And then we're going to give you the opportunity to participate in one of the elements of the model. And in that, we're going to talk about the true initiatives, objectives, and mission and goals about building the technology future of Hawaii. So that's going to be very fun. And so we're going to break you into probably 3 or 4 groups, and we're going to do that. Then we'll have some Q&A. So let's talk about sort of the founding work principles of the work that I do. Come back to something I call the 8 senses of change. And what this is a perspective, a need that I see in every successful change project. I believe that everyone in the organization needs to have an opportunity to experience each of these 8 senses. It's not something that they can be told to experience. It's not something they are mandated to experience. They have to experience it for themselves voluntarily for them to make the transformation that you need. So let's get to them. The first one is a sense of common purpose, envision future, and values. Without a question, what I have seen in the work that I've done and the others in the change world that have been successful is the realization that to come up, it's absolutely critical to make sure that you have a higher purpose in the work that you're doing, and an envision future and values that support that. And again, this goes back to the heart piece of it. You can have all the rational reasons for making the change that you want to, the business reasons, the environmental issues, whatever it might be. But if you can't provide people a sense of purpose beyond the rational, then unfortunately, I think most efforts will fall short. So it's key for us to, in the process, to make sure that people develop in this organization a sense of common purpose, vision, and future. A sense of urgency. Now, of course, everyone knows that you have to have something urgent. You have to have a sense for doing something now versus later if you're going to be able to be successful. And the key there is making sure that it is something that is authentic, that it isn't something that is made up, that leadership is just made up to make sure that people change. It has to be something that people can see for themselves, uncover for themselves, so that they are willing to say, wow, I get why we're doing this, and now I see why now we're doing this. A sense of authentic belief in and conviction for the change. McKinsey has this concept of the threshold of conviction. And what they say is that for a change to be successful, for an organization to move from A to B, it needs for everyone in the organization to answer in some affirmative way 3 questions. Why? Actually 3.5 questions. Why now, right? Back to our idea sense of urgency. What's the future look like? And the fourth or the third one is, what's in it for me? So what we need to do in this process is making sure that we allow people to answer those three questions, hopefully in the affirmative and in a positive way, so that they embrace this change. A sense of ownership for the change. One thing that we know, there's a great quote also by Randy Root, is people will tolerate the ideas of leadership, but in the end act on their own ideas. What does that mean? That means that for people to really go to where you want them to go, they have to get there on their own. They have to feel like they have some sort of skin in the game, some ownership of it. So ideally, and you'd have a change project, you say, okay, I'm going to make sure everyone owns this by having them be involved in the early upfront in the design of the strategy and everything that we're going to do. Well, in most organizations, that's not realistic. So what you have to do is early in this process, create opportunities for people to own what they're doing. And I'm going to give you an example of how to do that when we talk about the CPB case. The next is goes to another McKinsey concept, which is the threshold of experience. We need to provide people an opportunity to develop a sense of confidence in doing what they need to do for the change and behaving in a change manner. We always talk about change and doing something different. You have to work differently, you have to do this. But if you think about it, there's a being, there's a behavior, there's an approach to the work that often has to be there. How you lead in a new organization may be very dramatically different than how you do with an old one. So it's making sure that we provide them the opportunity to have this confidence, this sense that they'll be successful in this. The next is a sense of where we're headed, and specifically BHAGs, and I'm sure most of you know about this concept of the big, huge, audacious goal, something out there that's almost impossible for us to get to. And there's the work of Jim Collins and Built to Last tells the story of how many really successful organizations have BHAGs. And what I have found is that you can take that concept and apply it to the idea of change as well. And people creating a goal and an exciting future that people go, wow, I really want to achieve that. A sense of organizational commitment. And as you can imagine, this 8 senses of change has grown over time as I've done this work. And the 8th sense is really something that I have just put in recently. And it's because I've seen when we had this, how important it was. And I've also come into a couple of examples where we didn't have it and I saw us fail. Everything else above, we were in good shape, but this one we didn't. And again, an example I give is Mr. Cooper, which is a company that I worked with over years and was doing this kind of work. During that transformation, the CEO, a gentleman by the name of Jay Bray, for a good 18 months to 2 years, he spoke pretty much about nothing else other than this. And there's a famous Jack Welch quote that about the time that people start, about the time that you're getting tired of conveying some sort of message, that's about the time that people are starting to listen. So it's very important that the organization is single-mindedly focused and talking about this commitment. So again, my approach here is that in some sort of forum, whether it be a conference, a workshop, a lab, a coaching, we provide every employee the opportunity to experience each of these 8 senses. So when and where does this work? Well, let me give you a couple of things that I have seen in my work. In general, any situation where you're looking to watch a movement, right? This is really about creating a movement. It's not just about, okay, we're going to go here. It's about getting enthusiasm, excitement, passions for making this transformation to becoming something better. And so the first two on the left side there, Zome, which is an affiliate of Mr. Cooper, real estate services, and then Philips in Europe. The challenge that I ran into there was these were highly siloed organizations who were missing the opportunity of working that comes from working under, in both cases, one Zone and one Philips. What do you miss when you're operating that? Well, there's no cross-fertilization of ideas. There's no cross-selling of clients. But more importantly, you miss out on this fundamental need of human beings, and that is to be part of something bigger. I am part of Philips. I am in this organization. I am contributing to what we're out to do. I am growing in this organization. You're missing out when you're operating within those silos of that mindset that you can get by doing that. So that's where this approach has and can work well. Mr. Cooper and Central Pacific Bank are different in the sense that the challenge there was really to move from working in one manner to working in another. For Mr. Cooper, it was about moving from a mortgage servicing business, which was really not a business you wanted to be in because of the margins and the history of what was going on in that when this occurred in 2015, to one that was focused more on originations and the customer experience. For Central Pacific Bank, there it was a changing world of the technology of banking. How do we keep up with all that's happening on the digital side to becoming a bank that can compete against the larger banks, in fact, surpass them in our use of technology? So in both of those cases, it's trying to move beyond where you were to an environment where you're succeeding and needing this idea of change to get you there. Okay, so what you see here is an attempt to, again, at 30,000 feet, lay out all the thousands of things that happen when you're doing one of these projects. But the point here is that there are some very specific events, opportunities, actions that occur over the course of this change initiative to allow us to provide these experiences, these opportunities to all the employees. So let's start with on the left side. So what you see here at the top, or the blue, are all the various groups that we're targeting with this particular action or event. And then next is what we call it. So, and below that. So for the subset of leaders, employees, so this is basically going into the organization, a portion of the organization, a representative portion of the organization, and understanding the cultural and change assessment. And what that's about is understanding what about this organization, the people in it, and importantly, the culture provides us opportunities in this change. Things are going to help us get to where we want to go, or things that could get in our way, right? So there's that perspective on that. So that sets the tone for all the things and how the content, if you will, of all that comes next. The next sort of milestone is what we call an executive leadership launch conference. And what this is about working with usually the executive leadership team and then 1 to 2 levels below that. And what we're doing there is really sort of setting a point in time where we're launching this transformation, and we're working with the executive leaders and understanding all these elements that we talked about. And I'll get into more details with CPB and what that looked like for them. But basically the intent is for them to experience some of these senses and or opportunity to experience some of these senses so that they can then embrace the change that we're going through. We then go to a next step, is what we call people change workshops. And the idea is very simple. We want to give everyone in the organization a similar experience, not the exact experience, but something similar to what the executive leaders had. We can't obviously, when we're working with the executive leaders and the other leadership team, you can go and do a day and a half or 2 days offsite and you can go through all these exercises. And that's not realistic, of course, when you're working with the rest of the organization. So what we can do, though, is we can take all those elements, some of those fundamental elements of that experience that the leaders had, and put that and provide that to everyone in the organization. And again, when we get into the CPB case, I'll show you how we did that. Wendy Lee, you raised your hand. Do you have a question? Wendy Lee?
I think that was a prior exercise when she asked to raise hands. I thought.
Okay, sorry. Sorry.
Sorry.
David, I have a question for you if you're taking some. Is it the same for large and small organizations? Like this, it seems really thorough.
Yes, the steps are true, but the scope of what you do with them is very different, right? In a very small organization, for instance, you might be able to skip the people change workshops because you've got everybody in the room for the leadership conference. So really just depends on what it is. So the steps are the same. The scope and magnitude of what it looks like it will be different depending on the organization. And also, I'll tell you, so for instance, with CPB, they're looking at this, what's he talking about with culture and change assessment? We didn't do that, right? There's some things that because of timing, because of situations, for whatever reason, some of these elements don't actually have to happen, don't occur in a formal manner, right? We had a sense by working with my core team, of which Wendy Lee was one, of a sense for where the culture was and who the people are in the organization. But we didn't do a formal assessment. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So let me just move quickly to the next piece is what we call the people systems review and change. And this is really, you're taking it at this point, you need to make sure and take a systematic view of the organization. What are the things that are particularly in the HR systems that may or may not help in making this transformation? There's that old, I've heard this many times, the idea of how do you sculpt an elephant out of a slab of marble? Well, you chip away everything that's not the elephant. Well, it's kind of flip, but the point is that what are the things that could get in the way, or are there things that we do that could help accelerate the change? And one of the best examples there is, let's say in part of your transformation, one of the needs was we needed to have more collaboration, more teamwork. But then you look at your human resource incentive systems, and guess what? You're rewarding individual behavior, nothing around collaboration. So things like that are what happened. The next goes directly to that idea of the threshold of experience. What are the training? What are the labs? How can we get people to try out some of these new behaviors in a non-risky way? How can we train them to work in a different way? This is where that falls in. And then finally, we go back and we do that assessment. What are the metrics that we have put in place? Have we achieved those? Have we gotten to where we want? Have we moved our culture? And then you see the arrows going back to where you can say, hey, I don't know, maybe there's something we should have done here. We need to do something, whatever that might be. And then down below is this idea of coaching and mentoring, which is filtered throughout this. There's the power of not just these events and these actually processes, but also of the one-on-one daily conversations that go on between people to help move us towards that way. So let's talk a little bit about Central Pacific Bank and the human focused change there. So here is the mission and some of the guiding principles. And rather than me tell you about this, let me show you a brief video, or a segment of a brief video from Kevin Dahlstrom, who's the CMO of the bank, where he talks about the mission, which in this case is their purpose, and then the guiding principles that went into it. So let me share that.
So I always like to start with our mission at Central Pacific Bank, and our mission is to bring the aloha spirit to banking. And you may think that that sounds a little bit frou-frou, not really concrete, but that's on purpose, because if you think about banking, imagine, for example, a big bank. Whatever you imagine the aloha spirit to be, banks are anything but that. And so then take a moment and imagine what a bank might look like that brings the aloha spirit to banking. Again, whatever you might imagine the aloha spirit to be, it would probably look very different than today's banks. And that's really what we're trying to do at Central Pacific. So as we entered this transformation, we had really 3 guiding principles. Number 1, Paul, our CEO, is very clear that he wanted to become a digital first bank. And what that means is everything you do it first with an eye toward digital. And that's based on an assumption that digital is very quickly going to become the primary channel for all banks. And we're not excluded from that. The second thing is an idea that we stole from Google, actually, which is 10x thinking. So, it's easy within a company to identify lots of incremental improvements, and those things are important. I call those the 10% wins. But it's equally important to think really big and think 10x, like how could we scale our company 10x over the next few years? Those big ideas are really what drives the long-term growth of any company. And then finally, we wanted to stay true to our roots. And I'll talk a lot about our history, but we've got an amazing legacy at Central Pacific Bank, and we didn't want to stray from that. In fact, it's really hard to stray from the things that you can authentically do as a company.
You're muted, David.
Thank you. What you heard there was a couple of things. The most, of course, the purpose of the mission of bringing the aloha spirit to banking, but also in terms of the principles, the digital first and the 10 times thinking were new ideas, new ways of operating and thinking in the organization. And so those really set the tone, set the stage, for the transformation there. And so, and how they went about the change was adopting a new brand strategy. And when we say brand here, we're not talking about necessarily advertising or the graphics, although those are important and we're going to show some of those. What we're talking here about is what happens inside. The greatest brands are built from the inside out, and that's just the reality of it. Think the Apples of the world, right? And so for Kevin and the organization, it was, how do we build this organization built around radically human, right? Taking technology and making the banks currently are making it less human. What we want to do is use technology to become more human, more in spirit with our purpose of the aloha spirit. And so this was the device that was embraced or was used to make this transformation. And so I'll just show you a couple, again, external things. This is what the ATMs look like. Here's the cards. It's using this visual, this approach to the digital side of it. And then finally, radically human spaces. So for me, the challenge was how to get everyone in the bank authentically excited, engaged in, and passionate about this new strategy, and crucial, active in making it happen, making it come to life. So, little call out here to the team. Of course, Kevin, the CMO, Faye Miranaka, who's our VP and Advertising and Promotions Manager, Trisha Murakami, who's our Advertising and Brand Officer, and the grace that is Wendy Lee Atkins, our Training and Organization Development. And Wendy Lee was absolutely vital in making the success of this, because she brought to the team a long awareness and real sense of where the organization is and what we could and couldn't do. So let me just talk about a little bit, in terms of that process that I laid out, my approach above, in the slides above. Let me just hit upon two things that happened. Once was a launch conference, and then we're going to talk about the brand ambassador workshops. So what did this launch conference look like? Well, approximately 90 leaders, mostly made up of executive committee, members of the leadership council, and other senior leaders. And we met over Zoom. If you look up on the right there, that's my desktop back in Dallas. That's not for that particular event, but that shows you, how we did this 2 half-day sessions based here. And the program basically was started off with executive leaders, not me, not marketing, not Kevin's only, but the executive leaders presenting the what and the why and now. And they weren't saying, this is why, you have to, they provided the data so that you could walk away with, as we talked about, this sense of what this is and why we have to do it now. Then the next step was and again, that probably took, of the 6 hours, that was probably less than an hour. And the rest of the time was devoted to getting everyone to have this opportunity to work through these 8 senses. In particular, the future, the barriers, solutions. The barriers and solutions is a way to get to the ownership, right? By engaging people right at the beginning of this and saying, okay, here's our ideas, here's what we're hoping to do. Tell us what the challenges we're going to have with it. By asking that question, guess what happens? All of a sudden, everyone in the room becomes less just an audience. All of a sudden, they become active in the making of this new reality. And then it goes even further. Then you say, okay, we've had these challenges, these barriers. Now I want you to come up with solutions. And then even more so, now people are actively engaged. They're helping you address what's going to happen. And they came up with a lot of ideas that the leaders had no idea was going to come up. And so it was really powerful in terms of contributing. And then the last thing is this idea of being and doing, and understand, getting people to start voicing how they might do their job different, how they might be different in this work, and then asking for voluntary commitments. And we do that for a very simple reason. If we can get people to proclaim in front of their peers that they're going to do something, albeit small, it doesn't really matter. We know that they're more likely to actually do that. And so this is a device that we used in this leadership conference. So then the brand ambassador workshops. Here is everyone in the organization in groups of 20 to 30. Everyone went through a 2.5 hour session via Zoom, and each one was facilitated by a brand ambassador, which was somebody often from Wendy Lee's training team, but others in the organization who were facilitating these throughout over the course of several weeks. And the key here is that these were real plug and play. We basically made this effortless for these brand ambassadors in terms of giving them a teaching guide, giving them video from the executive leaders that we had filmed from the leadership conference, for them to have that and then basically use that as the backbone of this 2.5 hour workshop. The program there, pretty much the same, just not as lengthy, right? The executives present the what, and the why, and the why now. And then they got to go into the breakouts to look at the 8 senses again. And then also we asked for the voluntary commitments. So I'm rushing here a little bit because I'm running a little long. So that's how it looked at CPB. That was it'd be interesting to talk to Wendy Lee about this. This was done, like I said, at the end of last year, beginning of this year. So I don't have any factual metrics on our success in moving this way. I just have anecdotal evidence. But that anecdotal evidence is that there has been a great deal of progress, a great deal of change at CPB over the time. And if nothing else, their stock's up by 30% or something like that. Okay, so that was a lot. Let's break it down now and just do a breakout session where you get to play out this divining a future. What is the future for True Initiative? So here's what we're going to do. You're going to break into groups and you're going to brainstorm. Imagine True Initiative were to be amazingly successful in achieving its mission, ambitions, and goals, and do so in only 7 years. What would it be like? Some example questions you might answer is, how might your organization be different? How might the Hawaiian business community be different? What would you talk about when you attended conferences or other gatherings with other government leaders, business and government leaders and workers? How would you view this new future? What would you talk about with your friends and family here? What about on the mainland? So we're going to do that. And just to give you a quick reminder of True's initiatives, mission, ambition, and goals. The mission is to support organizations in accelerating their adoption of technology. Their ambition is local organizations are leveraging technology innovation to be competitive, sustainable, and expand globally. As a result, more Hawaiians make a good living and choose to remain in Hawaii, including Michelle's kids. So the goal, within 7 years, Hawaii will be spoken of in the same manner as Tokyo or even Singapore about the rate of technology adoption relative to the rate of technology adoption and implementation. So imagine when people talk about Tokyo and Singapore as, these sort of technology giants, what if Hawaii was spoken of in the same term? So here's what you're going to do. You're going to briefly, you're going to go into the room. You're going to briefly introduce yourself. Just name and where you work is fine. You're going to identify one person as your scribe, and what they're going to do is try transcribe on his or her computer the results of your brainstorm. You're going to identify someone to act as a timekeeper. You're going to start the clock. You have 8 minutes. You're going to review the task instructions from the PDF that you got from Michelle last night. And you're going to brainstorm, what would it be like? And the key here is don't be shy. All eyes are welcome. We're really just looking for your thoughts, sort of out there. Nothing is too crazy. And so then when you have a minute left, you'll receive a message from Michelle that the breakout is about to end. Okay. So then once we're back, the general session will ask for volunteer scribes to report out what you did. And if you're comfortable as a scribe and you can share your screen of what you came up with, that'd be great. And then I put the email address because Michelle would love to hear what you come up with. I'd love to see further and have that for her to access. So we're going to ask you to send that to her. So yeah, I'd love to hear from some of the scribes, any of the scribes. What are some ideas that you guys came up with? I know you were cut short a little bit there, but give us some of the top ideas that you came up with in terms of what this future looks like if True is successful in its mission, its ambition, and in particular its goal. Volunteers?
David, it's Wendy Lee. I'll share.
You bet.
Interesting, the group came up with, and I love this vision where, number one, we'd see more tech jobs available here for our kids, yes, but more tech companies actually opening their headquarters and offices in Hawaii, whether it be here in Honolulu or maybe on the big end, but just here in Hawaii, especially with the higher paying jobs, which brings more incentives for our kids to come back home.
Yeah, it's great.
And then there was another one with the cloud and AI, really types of jobs and the way we work. will be very different. We're not quite sure what that's going to look like, but very different.
Great. Anybody else?
This is Joe Byrne, and I'm noted here as Chip Phelps, but hi, Nina. One of the things in our group, we really didn't get started, have time to really get started, a little technical issue for one of our members. But we had two members involved in the IT division of their organizations, and it would be lovely to be able to get some information or thinking from both parties as we go forward. So perhaps, Michelle, there's some way we can stay connected or contribute. That would be lovely. Thank you, David. Enjoying this very much.
Well, good. Thank you.
That'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, Michelle, if you're open, if people have ideas about what this future is, I think Michelle would appreciate what shooting those are, again, answering for yourself rather than out of the breakout. What would it be like? What would it be like for you personally if she was going, if not she, if True were going to be successful in what it wanted to be? Anybody else? Come on, somebody.
Hi, this is Layla. I was also with Joe in the same group, but a thought that I had, I work in government in IT, and it would be nice if government could be a leader in terms of leading technology and creating the platform for multi-generations of the workforce to be, in this environment, because a lot of times we're behind the curve, right? In terms of leading that modernization or enhancing our tools, but that would be something that I would be interested in seeing.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I mean, so what the future would be was like, so the state of Hawaii would be known for being technologically forward, right? It would have a reputation. So that's the kind of thing that we're trying to get at here, is where people would then, within your organization, or even maybe IT organizations outside, that would go, oh man, Hawaii's really kicking it, right? They're really doing it. I want to be part of that.
Right. Thank you.
I love that vision. So I know that in Singapore and Hong Kong, it's the top of the top. They get the state and the government jobs. How cool is that?
That's right.
Yeah.
I'll just share a little story about that. Our company started in an incubator site in Kaimuki way back in the 1990s. And it was very dynamic. BCCA had a program to try to encourage technology companies to expand and to, grow roots in Hawaii. And it was very dynamic. We had lots of programs in that incubator site, and it went on to expand. And then it fell off. We don't have I don't see any active incubator ideas, and some of the businesses that had started out are no longer around. So there's a dynamic that goes on that needs, I guess, looking at. So David, your processes about how we analyze change and implement them for a long-term effect definitely needs to be applied. But on a massive scale like this, when we talk social and economic shifting, those are very challenging opportunity places. So something to think about going forward, especially given the COVID experiences and impacts, on our society. Mm-hmm. Very fascinating. Yeah. One of my personal interest areas, social change. Thank you.
The principles of this could be applied. Just think about it in terms of, instead of thinking about these as, leadership, think about, government, and then you could take these into public forums, right? And business forums, and start addressing some of them. So, yeah. Okay, so I guess to finish that up, if you do have any additional ideas, please send them Michelle, and so she can log them. That'd be great. Okay.
Great, thank you. And I'll just do a quick close, but if you guys want to stay on for Q&A, please do so afterwards. I just wanted to thank everybody for participating today. And I know that this is more of an active participation. We're used to Zooms where we can multitask, but I really appreciate it that everyone leaned in today. And thank you so much, David, for leading us in this session. I always like to share that True is focused on providing and sharing solutions. We're tool and vendor agnostic and very solutions focused.